Here we go. Never mind. They're out now. Patch notes. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Patch notes up now. Okay, I'm going to read the top later. Misfortune. Change. Removed overwhelm after leveling up. Woo! Big nerf. Big nerf. This is pretty huge. Wow. This was kind of what made her like an auto win when she leveled up. Like straight up. She is kind of no longer an auto win when she's leveled up. I think I like this change. This was kind of inevitable. Like overall, Scouts is still going to be viable. MF is still going to be viable. Like I think she'll still make sense in those decks that she's ran in. But it is a notable nerf. It's not an over nerf, I wouldn't say. Viktor buff. Viktor is, it goes to you've played 7 cards instead of you've played 8 cards, so it's easier. And now it creates a Hex Core upgrade on both play and start. Okay, so when you play Viktor, you get the Hex Core upgrade immediately. And it's 1 less created cards. Okay, so Viktor's still pretty bad. This is not changing anything. I will say, I mean, Viktor is kind of a meme card. He has like the lowest, by the way, for those of you guys who don't know, Viktor has like the lowest win rate of any champion historically of all time. Not exaggerating. So that's what I mean when I say this card is probably still going to be bad. The Grand Plaza. When an ally is summoned, give it +1/+0 and challenge it. Oh, they did it. Nice. This was actually a really common suggestion. Like I saw this, people were saying this on Reddit, like just make it 1 attack. This was like the most common community suggestion. I actually really like this. I think this is probably the best change they could have done. I was a little worried they wouldn't do this. This is a big nerf to Plaza. Scouts can't run Plaza anymore. Targon decks, I don't think can run Plaza anymore. I think for the most part, it's more of a tier 2 concept. Like ephemeral decks can still use Plaza. So yeah, overall, this is the nerf we wanted to Plaza. This is kind of the best way to like make it a nerf while still making it like a sort of viable card. It's probably not like a tier 1 card anymore. War Chefs. Okay, they nerfed War Chefs too. Ooh, that's kind of weird. Didn't they nerf this card already? Why are they nerfing it again? Okay, next. Homecoming. Goes to 4 mana. All right, next. So for those of you guys who don't know, Homecoming is it's really bad and it's still going to be, like, this card didn't need -1 mana. This card needed a lot more. Greenglade Elder is getting 2 attack. What? Huh? You know? Honestly, like it's easy to look at this change and be like, so this card has never seen play. Not really. Like I've experimented with it like once. Like I couldn't even call this card fringe experimental. This card has basically not seen play. But honestly, giving it a stat line where it can trade into something, I can actually imagine trying this card out. Its bigger problem is Ionia right now. Captain Ferron creates 2 decimates instead. Why? Huh? Like, okay. So I've played a lot of Runeterra. I've played a lot of Runeterra. Many hours of this game. I've literally never once seen Ferron's 3rd decimate kill anyone. Like I've never once seen that. I've played a lot. Like that is so incredibly niche. Like this basically won't matter. This basically won't matter. It's for discard fodder. Yeah, sometimes it's discard fodder. Overall, I like it's not like I mind this change, and it can matter for like expeditions and like maybe for newer players. Like it's not a bad change per se, but it's just like it's definitely not going to change almost anything. It's literally a buff. I mean, in some cases, it'll free up a hand spot. I wouldn't call it literally a buff, but I certainly... This is like a psychology change. Riven's Blade of the Exile goes to 1, and Blade Squire gets the stat change. Oh, wow, we predicted this. This is exactly what I was expecting to happen with Blade Squire. They'd make it a 2-1. Which honestly is a huge deal, by the way. This is probably a bigger change than Blade of the Exile. Blade Squire, it's hard to explain how like a 1-2 in Legends of Runeterra is literally useless. Like a 1-2 stat line is like the most useless thing ever, especially on a unit with like a last breath. Like it basically went from being literally doing nothing to having like a 2-1 stat line. Like now we can trade into like a mountain goat. We can like put a little bit of aggro pressure on something. Like, Blade Squire is like an actual card now. I think Riven decks weren't even running Blade Squire before, and now they can. And Blade of the Exile goes to 1 cost, which I don't think that was its biggest problem, but now being able to like cheese this out early will matter. You know, Riven actually makes some sense now. I will say, like, Viktor's still a bad card off of that change, but Riven makes some sense now. Ugh. There it is. Hush 3 mana. Hush ultimately counteracts too many strategies, oftentimes doing it in a super efficient way. While we wanted to avoid over-nerfing in the past, the overall play rate and amount of strategies, it's defanged. That's a nice word, defanged. Especially the champions from Cosmic Creations make it clear that a flat nerf is warranted. Yeah, I mean, overall, I'll go in like a little bit later talking about this and how I expect this to play out. This was very, very expected. Pale Cascade. Ooh, Pale Cascade gets nerfed to +1/+1. Yep, +1/+1. Interesting. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like, it makes sense. Pale Cascade was, I guess, a little busted. For sure. Like, it's still an alright card. There's still nothing really wrong with this card. It kind of wasn't really seeing a ton of play in this, like, latest meta. Just because, like, compared to how it was before, obviously, like, this is a nerf to, like, Lee Sin. It's a nerf to most Targon decks, but it's just funny that, like, for the first time, in a long time, we're seeing a lot of Targon decks cutting Pale Cascade. Most notably, the, like, Targon Demacia versions are cutting Pale Cascade already. Why nerf Diana? Yeah, obviously this is kind of an incidental. It's a nerf to, like, pretty much every deck except for that one deck was running Pale Cascade. It was kind of an auto-include card. I mean, I'm definitely fine with the nerf, but it does make stuff like Diana and, like, Nightfall feel a bit worse. Like, Nightfall was pretty dependent on Pale Cascade. Okay. So, these are the changes in a nutshell. Let me go back and kind of, like, clarify a few things. Yeah, Warchefs, I mentioned this was a nerf. This is kind of baffling to me. A 2/2 is, like, almost definitely worse than a 1/3. There's extremely rare situations. Like, okay, so think about it like this. It comes down to what you're trading into, right? The one stat line where this combat is a buff is like a 3/2, because like a 3/2 opponent is gonna be able to kill you here, and it's a trade here, right? So like we think the same thing for, you know, we think about stat lines like that where it's like a 3/2 is kind of the only big difference between this. The thing is, it loses the ability to trade into anything. It now dies to stuff like Mystic Shot. And most importantly, so think about it like this. What's the biggest, what's the most common matchup where you actually really want this, like, face damage? Probably not right now, but at least historically it's been like Avalanche decks, like Feel the Rush style, which, I mean, it's dying to like Avalanche and Mystic now. I mean, don't get me wrong, it can trade into Goat now. So like, it's not inarguable that it's a little bit better, but at the very least, it certainly doesn't matter, right? Like, dying to Avalanche and Mystic Shot is horrendous. Mountain Goat is basically the one argument that this could be considered a buff, but either way, my point is it doesn't matter. My point is that they're not changing anything here. And oh yeah, I wanted to talk about Hush a little bit. So Hush, I've thought about Hush going at 3 mana. I mean, Lee Sin decks will definitely not be able to 3 of this card. I think it'll still be a 3 of in most Targon decks. It might be a 2 of. I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I hope it's a 2 of in most Targon decks. It won't be less than a 2 of. The reason it's still going to be really good in Targon is because of what Hush does as a card. There's a lot of reasons. But ultimately, like, it fills a really important role in Targon, which is this idea of just being able to stop a lot from happening at fast speed. Like, that's a really big weakness. Like, there's just nothing else Targon can use for that. Like, Hush is still going to be, like, it's going to be hitting all the same value spots in that deck. It's going to be bailing you out of all the same problems. They fixed the Hush bug too. Yeah, they fixed the Hush bug too. I mean, I really don't expect Hush to be going anywhere. When a nerf happens, the, like, player psychology will dictate that there will always be a sort of over response to this nerf, and there will always be like a rubber band to overcompensate to that over response, right? So what that means is, like, when something gets nerfed, the play rate will temporarily drop down like a good amount. Like, maybe people will be running 2 of Hush in a lot of decks, or maybe people will be running less Targon. And, well, given that this is the Aphelios patch, maybe not. But I do expect, like, a lot of decks are going to go back to 3. It's called a placebo nerf. Yeah, ultimately, I don't think this is going to change a ton. Like, I can't say that this won't make some things a little bit better. Like, if it's a 2 of in a decent amount of decks, even if it's a 2 of in some decks, it will definitely allow, like, certain kinds of strategies to make sense. But ultimately, I personally don't think this is going to be, like, a big game changer to Hush. Like, when you think about Hush as a card, it kind of, like, never trades down. You guys have to understand that. Like, you're still trading it to repost and, like, really happy about that exchange, right? Even, like even cheaper stuff like Sharp Sight. People run Sharp Sight to protect important things. Like, when you Hush a Sharp Sight on, like, you know, especially if it's on an open attack or something, it's still doing something that no other card in your Targon deck could really be doing better than that, right? Like, it's still gonna be a really, really good card. Okay. So yeah, it looks like that's the overall balance changes. I think I covered everything pretty well. Overall, I like the fact that they're making Riven feel Riven might actually be decent. Like no joke, really no joke. Riven was a lot closer than Viktor was, and these go a long way into making that actually feel like it might be a thing. Blade Squire buff in particular. So that's definitely going to be fun to mess around with. Like, Riven could easily have, like, some kind of tier 2 option. Viktor, I can't stress enough, Viktor will not be. Viktor is, like, tier 7 right now, and, like, I don't even know if it'll be tier 6 after this change. He's not really designed to be a competitive card. What does the 1 mana Blade 2? Doesn't it have the same problems as before? Yeah, but, like, for the most part, it's the kind of card where mana won't make a big difference, but it's still, like, a 2 mana bump in an archetype where, like, you can squeeze it in a lot more efficiently, and, like, it's like a value card. It's not trying to, like, end the game. It's not trying to be, like, uncounterable, but it's like a value card that will put pressure and maybe, like, force removal. And at 1 mana, you're starting to, like, trade up. Like, when you force removal, or force some kind of option, like you force out an Arachnoid Sentry or something, I don't know, like, you're starting to get good value out of those forces because it's just a 1 mana card now. And that is a big deal. So it's important to think of Riven not as, like, a finisher, and this change doesn't make her, it makes her even less of a finisher. She is just a really, like, a value supplemental tool to, like, a general sort of, like, tempo strategy, right? Like, that is kind of what Riven does. And Blade being at 1 mana does help that approach. So overall, we've gotten the new cards, including Aphelios, and we've gotten these patch notes. So we can start to actually sort of predict, like, what the meta is going to be. It's going to be really interesting. I can at least, like, cover a little bit of it here, which is, like, we can look at an average tier list. So Fizz TF is probably going to get, like, a little bit better. It's got that new discard card, stress testing. Lee Sin as a deck is definitely getting better. Lee Sin is actually kind of crazy. On one hand, Lee Sin was running Hush, and Hush was important for him. I will say the Pale Cascade nerf does hurt Lee Sin. A big deal, because, like, Pale Cascade plus Eye of the Dragon was one of the most, like, toxic things ever. Like, there was, like, no deck that could ever attack into Eye, because if you have Pale, you have a 3/4 on turn 3, and that's, like, impossible to answer with anything ever, except for, like, Draven is the only thing that could answer it. So Pale nerf is big for Lee Sin, but you guys do have to remember, the Aphelios cards are doing well in Lee Sin too, right? Like, the Aphelios tutor for the Eye of the Dragon is going to be pretty good for Lee Sin. And honestly, I mean, I might be wrong, but I do think people are going to try out this new, what was that landmark? The Veiled Temple. This could be actually pretty decent in Lee Sin as well. I'm not sure about that. That's just something that, you know, people will experiment with, and we'll see if that works. But overall, I feel like Lee Sin's not really, like, going anywhere. It'll still be pretty good. For the most part, I do think Scouts can no longer run Plaza, period. And scouts are probably still going to be pretty good. They're a pretty good climbing deck, but more of a tier 2 deck instead of a tier 1 deck. So scouts are going to be like the biggest way the meta changes. And then it just comes down to some of the other new cards. There's going to be a lot of Aphelios. Zoe Aphelios is a really, really powerful champ combo. And we'll see people kind of racing to figure out like the best second color to run with Zoe Aphelios. The best way to do that. It will still be a pretty solid archetype, right? Like Aphelios will be like the future of Zoe decks, basically. Zoe decks have been looking for an Aphelios this entire time. He's so perfect for like the second champion for a lot of what Targon decks wanted. So Targon decks are going to be built very, very differently. Very, very differently. Draven Ione aggro seems kind of pog with double striking. There will be a lot of experimental things to mess around with. Absolutely. But that's kind of like my very, very brief impression. I'll go into more detail. We'll talk about like meta predictions. But for the most part, we're going to be seeing a lot of like Zoe Aphelios decks and still a decent amount of like the like tier 1 decks that we're seeing right now. I don't think that much is going to be changing long term in terms of tier 1. Riven might have some tier 2 representation for sure. Like that's actually possible. Okay. And yeah, that is my patch notes initial impressions. What do you guys think? I'll read more of this, and kind of talk a little bit more in depth about like meta predictions. Have I missed anything? Fior Shen will be busted. Fior Shen will be pretty good. Yeah, no, there's emotes. Oh wait. Did I miss emotes? You're right. I didn't scroll down to the bottom. Oh, there's emotes. Do we have animations for these? Animations are really important. Okay, so this is... I don't know who that is. But she can step on me. God, I don't know any of these characters. I'm lost. I think this left boy is Aphelios. I have no idea. That second one's Fiora? I thought that might have been Fiora. I thought so. Is this third one... I should know this. There's some like... it's on the tip of my tongue. There's some pink-haired... God, who is this? Oh, God, hang on. Let me get it. Long pink hair. Isn't there some champion with pink hair? It's not Vi, is it? Oh, it is Vi. And then this is... Darius? I have no idea who this is. Swain? That's MF. This one on the right? Wait, is this one is MF? Check the card back, it's MF. Wait, what? Oh, it is MF. Why does she have like long pink hair? This doesn't really look like MF. I will say, in terms of emotes, this MF emote is pretty good. I'm a big fan of the question mark. You guys know me. I'm a MOBA player. I love the question mark. You guys had that too in League, right? Because I played Dota. We loved the question mark in Dota. The question mark is just it's just so simple. Because you're playing a MOBA, you're typing it in. It's just like one character. So you can do it while laning. You can fit it in anywhere. You can do question mark pings. It's like... If someone ganks your lane and they mess up and they think you should have gone in and you were just farming, you question mark them. If you gank their lane and you think they should have gone in and they're just farming, you question mark them. It's just like, it's the perfect MOBA emote. It's perfect, right? It's just, you just throw out a question mark. And so you guys know, I like the Ha emote. This question mark emote is pretty alright. I don't know if it's better than Ha. I do think I like Ha better personally, but... I will never say no to a question mark emote. I will never say no to that. Okay. So, thanks for pointing that out. I almost missed that one. But yeah, overall, this is my initial impressions of the balance patch. For the most part, I'm very interested in like new potential Riven stuff. This Plaza nerf is very big. This is actually the perfect nerf to this card. I was a little worried they would do like something else. Yeah, so for the most part, the Plaza nerf is probably the biggest like meta shift we'll have. Targon, it's important to be aware, like Targon is probably not really going anywhere from a meta standpoint, because you know, obviously they're kind of nerfing Hush and they're nerfing Pale, and that matters. But the thing to understand is like, this is how these expansions are going to work. They will kind of have to nerf a couple of the Targon cards as they release more Targon cards, because they're releasing a lot of good Targon cards here, right? Like, and that's going to kind of balance out the fact that some of these are getting nerfed, right? For better or worse, ultimately, but it's going to add a bit of balance. So I wouldn't expect Targon to really go anywhere because of that. Okay, that's it. What do you guys think? We can talk about the meta stuff.